Farming as an industry has its fair share of problems. We've got an ageing work population, long working hours, lonely working conditions, a lot of mental health issues in farmers, particularly young farmers, just to name but a few. And those are all big problems in and of themselves, but they are the consequence of the biggest issue that is facing farming today. And that is that it is becoming increasingly difficult for farmers to make money producing food. Whoa, now you might think that that is a wild statement to make because farming is one of the oldest industries in the world and they have been successfully producing food for centuries. And it's mainly down to two reasons. The first one is that we are now living in a global world. And secondly, here in the UK, 90% of people regularly do their food shop in a supermarket, and 65% of which is controlled by just 4 companies. So let's look at these two reasons more closely, and more importantly, let's have a look and see what farmers can do about it. What? Everybody needs a brew. Great Britain, as most of you know, is an island, and relatively speaking, it's a pretty small one at that. The British Empire imported loads of goods from all over the world, but for your basics, milk, potatoes, meat, bread, etc., we were pretty self-sufficient. World War I came along, closely followed by World War II, and this is where things got a little bit interesting. There came the realisation that Britain wasn't going to be able to support and feed the war effort on homegrown produce alone, and that they would have to import it from elsewhere. Now, in between the two wars, the UK introduced farm subsidies, which incentivised farmers to produce food and effectively feed the nation in any subsequent conflicts. Post-war, these subsidies remained, and they were a way of keeping food prices low and affordable to the masses. This also coincided in the 50s and 60s with the rise of the supermarket, and it led to the decline of independent shops. Fast forward to today, and over 90% of people in the UK regularly buy their food from a supermarket, of which 65% of that market is controlled by just 4 companies. Now, you don't need Adam Smith to tell you the power that these big companies have in a monopoly market. Now, UK farmers have very little choice in terms of where they can sell the majority of their produce, and rather than set the price is dictated to them. Coupled with this, UK supermarkets now have the entire globe in which they can buy their produce. So, if they don't like the price at home, or if it's not quite right, they can happily go elsewhere and get it somewhere cheaper. Put simply, UK supermarkets have too much power in the supply chain. Now, to really put the nail in the coffin, since leaving the EU, the British government are actually reducing the old EU food production subsidies and are introducing environmental subsidies instead. Ultimately, it is just economically unviable for farmers to produce food in this country, and that is having a huge knock-on effect on the entire agricultural industry here in the UK. Farmers are having to work increasingly longer hours to try and effectively stay still and retain that profitability, but because margins are getting squeezed, they're not making any progress. This is leading to increased loneliness, financial worry and financial stress, and a lot of talent leaving the industry, all of which is having a huge impact on farmers' mental health. Over 90% of farmers here in the UK under the age of 40 have been affected by mental health at some stage in their lives. That is a shocking statistic. So, what do we do about it? Well, without government intervention, the supermarkets just aren't going to change. And if we sit around the entire time waiting for the government to make a change, then we're going to be here for a very, very long time. But it's not all doom and gloom, because agriculture and farming has one trump card up its sleeve, and that is its ability to combat climate change. Agriculture and farming is one of the best placed industries in the world to tackle climate change, and done rightly, it can have a huge impact on reducing global temperatures. It's our old friend Adam Smith again. Supply and demand. They're not making any more land, it's a finite resource, and therefore we need farmers and we need agriculture and farming in the UK and abroad to tackle this. So what do farmers do about it? Well, they need to diversify. Let me say that again, diversify. And in case you didn't hear it, diversify. Diversify away from a food production system and into other revenue streams that are going to pay a fair price for your time, effort and skill. Not completely stop, or give up food production, but diversify away from it so that you can build additional revenue streams in your farm business so that we can still deliver on a food security strategy and help feed a growing population.